Hello and welcome. HSBC is of course a familiar name to most of us, a bank that has been operating in India for many years. With some differences, it has tried to expand its presence in India organically as well as inorganically, not without much success, and yet the bank continues to grow steadily and even internationally. Post the meltdown, the bank has had relative success in staying put. I'm joined now by Stuart Milne, CEO of HSBC in India, and let's ask him how things have been for HSBC in recent years and what he sees as the opportunities and challenges going forward. Stuart, thank you very much for speaking with us today. Can I ask you a broad question first before I come to HSBC in specific? How do you view the economic and business environment from a banker standpoint, particularly in Europe and the rest of the world, and then we'll come to India?
Well, in terms of the global picture, obviously we have some challenges in some of the more developed markets, but we still have strong growth in some of the developing markets. So if you look at Europe, for example, versus the Asia-Pacific markets, you see two quite different pictures, with European growth quite constrained, clearly significant debt challenges both at the government level and at the corporate and individual level. Whereas in Asia-Pacific, although it's true that growth has slowed down somewhat, you've still got pretty good growth in markets like China, India, Indonesia, and others as well.
So let me put a different question to you. Are we now in a post-Greece world, and or are we still to emerge from the problems of 2008-9?
I believe that actually the emergence from the problems that first emerged in 2008, 2009 actually is going to take quite a long time. If you look at the problems we have in the European Union in particular, what you see is that actually there's a significant debt problem throughout the economy. Governments have to deleverage, and companies and individuals also have to deleverage. And that's a process that's just going to take time. So I don't think this is a 1 or 2 year fix. I actually think it's going to take quite a bit longer. And this is partly why you're seeing a lot of investors now, whether they're companies or indeed institutional investors, looking to shift capital out of the developed markets and move that capital into developing markets, the faster growing markets like India.
Right, and how would you describe the India banking environment, both institutional as well as retail banking, from your point of view?
Yeah, so of course the Indian press is full of commentary on how challenging the market is here. Although we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that actually a 5.5% plus growth is a reasonable level of growth when you compare it to other markets internationally. There are certain sectors that are quite heavily stressed. So if you look at certain parts of the infrastructure sector, power, for example, a lot of stress there. In the aviation industry, some very well publicized issues. So there are some areas where there's a lot of stress emerging. On the other hand, there's also parts of the economy which are doing extremely well, and they're growing much faster than the average of the sort of 5.5 level. So if you look at parts of the economy to do with consumer spending in particular, actually these are still doing reasonably well.
Right. What's your experience been, or rather your own experience been, again, in the context of the Indian environment, dealing with clients and businesses in the last year or so?
Yeah, so as a bank, we basically reflect what's happening with our clients. So as our clients do well, then we do relatively well. When our clients don't do so well, then it's the same picture with us as HSBC. In terms of our corporate business, which is the core of our business here in India, actually it's been doing pretty well. And that's because what we focus on is the flows, the cross-border flows in particular. So, for example, where Indian companies are investing overseas, or where global companies are investing here in India. And we're still seeing quite significant flows happening in that area. On the retail side, so that's in terms of the personal banking, again, we've done reasonably well in these areas, although I have to say that the capital markets and investing in the capital markets has been quite volatile, and volatility is not really so good for retail investors. But as a general comment, India has very good potential in the retail sector, in banking, just like in other types of service industries, because wealth is growing generally and the population is growing. And these two things happening together means that actually the long-term picture is very positive.
Right. How do you see, or what are your thoughts on the Indo-UK corridor, particularly considering that you have a very strong presence in both countries?
Yeah, and you're correct that we have a very strong presence here. India is one of the sort of top 5 countries in terms of HSBC's business worldwide, and the UK is also one of the top 5. So we have a very strong position in both on both sides of that corridor. The two countries are natural partners. If you look at why is UK attractive to India, it's basically because UK as a window into the vast European market is really critical, and that's underpinned by this long tradition of association between the two countries. The fact we have a commonality of language, legal systems are very similar, and we know each other very well. So this is a very natural corridor looking from India into the UK as a window into Europe. And I stress that because this is not just about the UK domestic market, it's about the UK as part of Europe. On the other hand, looking from the UK into India, clearly there's a huge opportunity for UK companies which are able to navigate what is a very complex market, but which is also a very large and growing domestic market. So capturing a share of that growth by UK companies clearly is very attractive. That's why we see the trade numbers growing, and that's why we see both countries putting such importance on increasing the trade flows between the two.
And Stuart, what would you like to see happen on the Indo-UK corridor again from either a policy or an investment point of view in the next year or so?
Well, I think from a UK angle, I think it's really important that the UK continues to be really central to the European project, and that we don't see a situation where the UK starts to withdraw from the European project. Because, as I said before, the reason why the UK is attractive is because, yes, we have a shared language and a shared history, but more importantly, because the UK is part of Europe. If that position were challenged, then I think that the relevance of the UK to India, both on the political level and on the corporate economic level, is going to be eroded. So I think it's very important from a UK perspective that remains the case. Also at a more practical level, things like visa regime, this is really important because clearly if we're looking for large-scale investment from Indian companies, then making sure we've got a friendly and open regime is really important. Let's not forget that India is actually the second largest investor into the UK after the US. So it's really important that we get that right.
Right. So what are the top of mind issues for you on the policy front, again, speaking as a banker?
Well, as a banker, again, we reflect what's happening with our clients. So what's important to us is that we have a stable and predictable marketplace. And that's both in terms of regulation, so making sure that regulation is predictable is really important because companies like to invest in that kind of environment. They don't like to invest when regulation is unpredictable. So predictable regulation is critical. The exchange rate and monetary conditions are also very important factors. So investors, in fact both domestic investors and international investors, will invest when these conditions are predictable and stable. When they are unstable, and we're seeing that presently, then it becomes much more difficult to predict future earnings, and therefore investment is less likely. So what we do want to see is that the rupee dollar rate, for example, does stabilize, and that we arrest this situation we have currently where the currency, the rupee, is under some pressure. And actually fundamentally the way to address that is through dealing with the very large current account deficit that India faces currently.
Right. Could you also tell us how is HSBC planning to grow? Now, what I mean is you've tried to grow inorganically in the past, perhaps not without much success, and I'm sure you are keen to expand operations further. So is it going to be organic or inorganic?
Well, the fact is that right across the world and here in India as well, we really do focus on our current business and our clients, expanding our client base. We have a very strong brand. And that's certainly the case here in India as well. So we're using that brand to expand our presence in the marketplace. And that's really riding on the back of the growth that we're seeing in the Indian economy. The fact that the Indian population stays younger for longer than any other major economy means that the market is fundamentally attractive. And actually we can capture that just by investing more in our own business and our own brand. We don't actually need to make acquisitions to do that. One should also note that actually in the banking sector in India, in common with many other faster growing markets, it's not actually easy for a foreign bank to grow inorganically anyway. And therefore it's much better for us to focus on growing our own business, investing in our own business, and capturing growth that way.
So a quick follow-up question to that one. Would you like to see a specific policy intervention here?
I'm not too worried about that, quite honestly. I think there's a lot of opportunity in growing our own business, and that's really where our attention is. And you know, looking at inorganic is not really the priority.
Right. So what are the one or two things that you've really liked about living, working and doing business in India?
I think the thing I like the most is the sheer diversity one finds in India. So you can travel up in the Himalaya in the very far north, and then you can go to the very far south of the country, and you see the enormous diversity within India. And this is something that actually until you come to India and experience, you don't really realize the fact we have so many different languages, different cultures, different approaches to business. This makes life tremendously interesting and is a thing that's unique to India.
Stuart, last question. Is there one experience again from living in India that you would like to share with us?
I spent a few days up in Ladakh with my family in about this time last year, June of last year, and that was fascinating to see the landscapes and the people in Ladakh and how different that is to the rest of the country. Was really quite amazing.
Stuart Milne, thank you very much for speaking with us.